But as soon as mortgage rates get compressed, home prices go up. We're seeing in Toronto, where I am, home prices are up 8-10% just because these interest rates have gone down. Prices are actually skyrocketing now. We have never seen anything like this. And man, oh man, the news does not disappoint again. So, is this the end of the recession? Are we done with it now? Our home prices only be going up from here? Because the way that it is looking right now, when we're looking in the market, it looks like we're back to our old tricks where there's lineups of properties. There is a ton of offers going on homes, and we're back to paying over market listing prices again. And so let's jump into where we are today. Let's dig into this. We're going to do a deep dive today. According to the Financial Post here in Canada, it says that housing prices are rising month over month for the first time in 10 months. The cost of Canadian housing could finally be tracking up. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because for a lot of people who are looking to buy at lower prices, the prices going up in combination with super high interest rates could pose a massive problem to people who are looking to buy. Now, the article continues on. It is written by an economist, so you take that for what you want. This is for Terranet, a national bank composite house price index. That's a lot of words, you guys. So the index tracks the average price of homes sold at least twice in 11 major metropolitan areas, 11 cities. Now, this is a Canadian one, but there is so much to take from this for the United States as well. It's identical. But notice it's a very tricky the way they say it. It says that the actual home, had to sell at least twice. Okay, well, that's not all homes, right? So maybe that's not the best way to look at it. Now, of course, it's the National Bank of Canada. They have a lot of skin in the game. They want you to keep buying properties, right? They want you to have more mortgages. Now, they're very careful the way they say it. Signs of a possible revival in the sector, they want to say. Now, earlier this month, the aggregate composite MLS home price index shows 0.2% on a month-to-month basis in March, according to the report by the Canadian Real Estate Association. These are a lot of big words, you guys. Aggregate composite MLS home price index. My goodness, how many words can they put into this thing? So we're going to look into this and actually dig into what this means. Now, they're saying on a yearly basis, though, the index fell 6.9%, slightly worse than the previous record contraction recorded during the 2008-09 financial crisis. Okay, so they are admitting that this is the worst that they have seen, even worse than the great financial crisis. Okay, so they are saying that. Let's continue on, though. This is what I want you to remember. This is called the psychology of money. You can go to wallstreetcheatsheets.com. So that's cheatsheet.com if you want to get a picture of this. Now, this is called the psychology of a market cycle. Now, this is the same when we're talking about stocks, the same as we're talking about properties, the same thing that we're talking about anything like that. So notice that in the beginning, there's a hope of a recovery, then goes to optimism, belief, where you're believing the stock market is still ripping higher. So is houses. Then a thrill and a euphoria. I'm a genius. We're all going to be rich. Euphoria. Remember 2021? 2022, there were properties in Toronto going up $250,000 a month. Okay. That's euphoria. Now, notice it drops down quite severely. And as it drops down, then there's a bump where it comes back up. Now, this happens in stocks. This happens in houses, everywhere, where the price comes back and we get into this period called a complacency. We just need things to cool off for the next rally. When that happens, they sometimes call this a dead cat bounce. When that happens, there's a period where we're locked in this channel, and then comes the drop. And there's anxiety, then denial, then panic, as we're getting into a very low, when the market, homes and stocks lose a lot of money and they go sideways for a long time. And now this can happen, like I said, housing, stocks, it doesn't matter. And if you look at the Japan, for example, the Nikkei topped in 1990 and it's never recovered. Okay, so now we're talking 3 decades of it not recovering. That's not the case in North America and Canada and the States. Our general peak to trough, could last a year and a half, 2 years, and normally it'll level out within 5 or 6. But this, it can drop a lot. So there's always this complacency phase where you're in that channel. They call that a dead cat bounce, kind of a gross name, but it is what it is. All right, so let's look at some real numbers. So I pulled up here in the last 13 months. Now I'm looking in Toronto, okay? But this is the same for if we're looking at Miami, I've looked at Atlanta, I've looked at New York and Boston and San Francisco, and like most cities over 1 million people. So this is just showing me in the last 13 months, 95,000 properties that we're going to look at this. Okay. 95,000. So this is giving me a real good idea of what we're looking for. And so just to put this into context, we're gathering out of those 95,000 properties is every single home bought and sold by every single agent at every single brokerage. And this is according to the provincial and national registry where they register these homes. So we got a lot of data that we can use here. So let's look into this data here. You can see that the prices of homes were dropping on average $10,000 a week for a year. Down, 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 down. Okay. But then this is, look at the date, January 2023. This is key. Do you see that prices have rebounded massively from 980 to 1,050,000? I did a whole video about that. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, they gave everybody 50 grand. I was wrong. It's actually much more than 50 grand. So if we take a look at this, we have to know, why is the price spiking? Because everybody that keeps telling you, well, it's the spring market. It's the spring market. It's always the spring market. Really? Okay, let's go back to February, March, April, May of last year's spring market. What happened? A $1.3 million. Next month, 1.23. Next month, 1.2. The next month, 1.14. Okay, so they dropped $150,000 just last spring. So this tells you that the spring market is not the answer, you guys. This is not the answer. I know that 50% of the homes are sold in one season, but the answer can't be it's just the spring market. So why did prices go way, way up? It all comes down to, please go to StatsCan or anywhere that you want to look at what the mortgage rates were. The mortgage rates have fallen. And if you're looking at variable rates, there's even more interesting stuff. If you look at generally, now this doesn't matter what bank, if you're Bank of America or Wells Fargo or whatever, you always see if you take on more risk, you get a better reward. So usually the 5-year variable rate in Canada or any variable rate in the States, you're going to get a better rate because you're taking on more risk. This is the red line. It's always far below. So the fixed rate is always higher. I'm paying more for my security blanket. And something totally cockamamie happened this year where now fixed rates are below variable rates. First of all, we all know why a bank would do that. Number one, the bank knows something that you might not know, right? That there could be trouble in the future. And so if there is, they're going to accept making no money for the first year if they know they've locked you into a contract and they can make a lot of money off of you in the future. So it's inverted, we call that. And when there's inverted rates, now we have to start paying attention to things. But people are jumping on these rates. They're seeing some relief in the fact that the interest rate has come down. When Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, banks were scared. They need money. They're lowering the amount of commission that they're taking on each mortgage. And that also puts that downward pressure. But as soon as mortgage rates get compressed, home prices go up. So we're seeing in Toronto, where I am, home prices are up 8-10% just because these interest rates have gone down. And remember, the national rate hasn't gone down. It's the amount of commission that the banks are willing to take has gone down. And now we're seeing some funny things like the rate inversion, like we're seeing right here, just like we're seeing in the 2-year and the 10-year. Interestingly, if we jump back to that article, they're saying they're looking at 11 cities across Canada, all the biggest cities, but they're saying that there was a gain. If we remember right at the very beginning, it says 0.2% month over month. The headline article says housing prices rise month over month for the first time. But remember, they said on houses that sold at least twice. 2 times in a year. This is why we have to be careful where we get our information. Let's go to the Canadian Real Estate Association that they were referencing. Let's try to look at some of the cities. Now, I tried to reduce this. You can actually look at a lot of different cities, but I tried to reduce it to some of the main large cities in Canada. We can see Vancouver had some massive swings in 2016. Obviously, that was policy, Fed policy. And then we see it actually rose massively in 2020, 2021, as we all know, but it actually came way down. The next one on the list is Toronto. The next one down is Victoria, very, very expensive. And then at the bottom 2 are both Calgary and Montreal. what we got to notice here is let's zoom in really far. And I want to show you what they're trying to reference here, because what they're trying to reference is very little. It's very, very subtle. Sorry, let's do this one more time. What did we have? Toronto, Vancouver. These are cities, 5 million, like, oh, well over a million every time, right? So let's just pull those up and we're going to try to be very careful about what we're looking at. Do you see that home prices were dropping? Every time there was a rate increase, drop, 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 drop. But because the prices actually fell for the mortgage rate since January, do you notice this tiny little upswing here? Tiny upswing, tiny, 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 nothing. You can barely see it. Tiny, tiny upswing for Toronto. And when you get to Montreal and Ottawa and Calgary, very little. So let's look at where they were in December. 497. Where are they today? 511. They've went up $11,000. Nothing. Okay. So this is my point in showing you this is, of course, you can make the data look however you want. I know that there's this slight increase, barely visible, right? $11,000 when you're making a $500,000 purchase is really not much, right? This can swing that much. Remember before I was saying homes here were dropping 10,000 a week, every week for a year. So this is why I want you to be careful in what you read. Number one, always look at the source of who is writing it. And so the person who is writing it could have ulterior motives for whatever that you're wanting. Number two, as soon as you start seeing data and charts, and you know me, I love a good chart, right? Love it. Okay, I'm a nerd. But when I look at these charts, my number one question is stop. Where did you get that information? How did you calculate that information? It's kind of like the CPI that's out there, our inflation numbers. Because when you actually, we hear it in the news, oh, inflation was 4%. I hear this from everybody. Oh, it's only 5%. But is it? Where did that information come from? Could they manipulate that number for their own benefit? How did you calculate it? The cool thing is that we can actually go and dig into this and find out exactly how they calculated it. And once you start digging into those numbers and figuring out how they calculated it, you're like, well, I smell something fishy here. Okay. So just be careful. And like, this is why I always talk about financial education is the key to everything. Take it from me, a guy who started on welfare. I could not afford food. I was on welfare for like 4 or 5 months. It was so like desperate situation for me. But financial education is the thing that helped me move out of that. And I have to say that really helped me. But I think the number one thing that helped me in my life was my wonderful wife. Best thing that ever happened to me. Like I remember being in the hospital, flat out bad injury. And I was telling her, like, I just didn't want her to ruin her life. And I said, I want you just to leave me. I understand. I understand. Like, I'll do this on my own. And she would never leave me, and she was upset that I said that. But it was because I didn't want to hurt her. But I'm saying that type of person that will just stick by you for any reason, right? They make you better and they make me better. They make me think better. And I always think the number one decision you're going to make in your entire life is the partner that you have. And so, I'm blessed. I'm so, so thankful. Anyway, you guys, if this helps you at all, please consider subscribing to it, liking this channel. It really, really helps me out. Please send it to a friend that this can help. Remember, we're going to have some fantastic opportunities to buy some incredible, incredible properties in the next couple of years. And I'm going to help you through that. You guys, I'm a broker in Toronto. So if you're thinking of selling your property in Toronto, this is what we do. And you can contact me right here at Ruff Team Realty or sellhire.ca. Either one, you could reach me anytime. I wish you the very best, you guys. Stay safe.